سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. بعد. So first, we'd like to welcome you all to this session today at the London Muslim Mosque. We're pleased to be able to have a number of guest speakers who will be speaking today about guidance for parents and youth in terms of keeping our children safe. So the purpose of today's session is to look at safe paths for all of our children from various perspectives. We have 4 speakers that are going to be addressing this issue today, 5 actually. So first we're going to begin with our beloved Imam, Sheik Mohammed Al-Jammali, and he's going to be talking about the Islamic perspectives or teachings on avoiding negative influences. We're also pleased to have 2 representatives from the London Police Service, that we have Constable Jackie Wilson as well as Sergent Ziyad Zabian, both of who have been serving in the London Police Service for a number of years. And they're going to be providing insights into gang activities here in London, Ontario. And then for the third presentation, we're actually going to be splitting the group into 2 workshops. We're going to have a parents workshop that's going to be led by myself, where I'm going to talk about some of the factors that lead to children's involvement in criminal activities or groups, and particularly those that are stemming from the home. And then simultaneously, there's going to be a youth workshop. So we'll have the young people that will be sitting with Sister Raja Abaid, Abid. I always mix up between Abid and Abaid. Abid, Raja Abid. And she'll be speaking on behalf of the John Howard Society to the young. So we'll have 2 separate workshops. And then we'll come together for the last part of the session just for Q&A before we break for Maghrib. So without any further ado, we'll have our Imam, Sheik Mohammed Jammali, to be able to speak to the Islamic perspectives before moving on to understanding gangs from our representatives from the London Police Service.
Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam wa salam ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. May Allah bless this gathering and may Allah grant the best for all of us in this life and hereafter. My talk will be sort of an introduction and just to lay the foundation about the Islamic perspective about this topic. As Islam values the family more than the individual. The individual within the family is respected and right will have to be maintained. But the bigger picture about the family is more important. When I say family, that every member is counted there. The father, the mother, the children, everyone in there has a role and it's count. It's very important. And Islam does not call for individualism. However, the need for every individual has to be maintained and had to be gained through the family, as that's the priority. And look at that. What is the society? It's a number of families. So when you take care of the family, you have to actually take care of the whole society. And now, as we are today here for awareness, for preventive measure, we are here to remind ourselves about our responsibility. This is really important. This is as an individual in the society, as an individual in a family, I have a role. And I have to fulfill that role because God will going to question me. Allah will going to question me about my responsibility. Inna Allah sa'ilun kullu ra'in amma star'a hafidha mdayya. Allah will question each one of us about our responsibility, about this amana, about this trust. And the worst things actually to do, the worst things that could happen, that if you lose that responsibility. The Prophet said, كَفَى بِالْمَرْءِ إِثْمًا أَنْ يُضَيَّعَ مَنْ يَعُودُ. One of the worst sin, if be the reason for negligence and not taking care of your duties. And that might lead to destroying the family and even cause for harm. So it's very, very important to understand that. And that's the first, way to defend ourselves that from problems comes to us. When you feel that you're responsible, so you are be ready. That's really important. When you know there is an army, there's a problem is there, you are going to equip yourself with the right tools. So it's very important that you be aware of that. I'm as a who have background of electricity. Like I'm give some example from my field. Like when you have a building and there's a fire in there, if there's a fire in there and there's a sprinkler system in place, everything's there, but the fire system never work. The alarm system never work. All of that will fall apart. So the first system, if it doesn't work, even if they're in place, it will not gonna work. So the fire will eat everything, will have a great collapse. So awareness is important. Being responsible and feel of the responsibility, that's really important. So the Prophet ﷺ made it clear, كلكم راع وكلكم مسؤول عن رعيته. Every one of you is just shepherd. Every one of you. Shepherd means have duties to look after somebody. And he mentioned that الأب راع ومسؤول عن رعيته والأم راعية ومسؤول عن رعيتها. So he mentioned even in details that the father he's a shepherd and he's be questioned about those under him, the mother as well. So he mentioned many of that. We have a role regardless. I'm a son, I'm a daughter, I'm a father, I'm a mother. Each one of us has a role, and we have to involve positively in the family, and that will have a great impact on the society. So let's learn today, inshallah, and remind ourselves and having the right intention. We are here really in asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that to protect our families. We are here asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to excuse us if we have done all our side and something wrong happened, because it's going to happen regardless, but at least we did our part. At least we're trying our best. There's one parent, he has a troubled son, and I said, do you regret that? He said, no, I don't regret that, because I did my side. I did my side, I did my duties, I did my job. I did all of the things. Whatever you advised me, I did it. He was troubled son, having troubles. That's his problem. He's not young. He's an adult. He did all of that. So why I feel regret? But the one he'd have done nothing, yes, he will feel bad and he will regret, but that will be too late, So we don't want to be in a situation or any of that. And we look at ourselves as one family. All of us in this society as one family. As a Muslim community, we are one family. As part of the society, are one family. And we look at the police services as part of our family. We look at, the John Howard Society as part of our family. Because all of them, they care about us. And they extend their services for us. So we should not feel embarrassed to go and ask and seek the help. Sometimes it's too late. When we have a troubled son, for example, we feel ashamed and there is a stigma in there until it's too late. No, you have a trouble with any member in a family, seek the right channel, and people, they will extend their hands. And they're not going to put you in trouble. Some people say, okay, if I call police, if I call, some of those agencies, you know what? I'm putting my family in trouble. And it's, no. That should be changed. This mentality, it should be changed. No, those people that are there for us and they want to really help us as much as that they can offer. And there are many programs that we don't know about it that they will help us. So we are not here just to deal with troubles and problems. No. We are here to prevent those troubles that will happen, or at least to reduce the harm that might comes from there. And do you know what? The whole Islam, if you want to summarize the whole rules of Islam, it's built on what? Built on what? دفع الضرر وجلب النفع. Defeating the harm and bringing the benefit. And in Islam, دفع الضرر مقدم على جلب النفع. That to push away the harm that comes before bringing the benefit and seeking the benefit. So we are here for the same cause. Whatever we do, that to prevent the harm that comes to our families and bring whatever benefit that could benefit our families, to take our family to the safe shore. Here, my dear brothers and sisters, we are all in the same boat. And we are in the same ship. And we have all to contribute to that. And imagine if somebody and one of us decided to make a hole in that ship. We're going to let that person do it? No. If you let that person do it, the ship will sink and everybody will sink with it. The one he did the harm and the one the other. Because all in one society. So we need to protect our society, we need to protect our families, and we have individual responsibilities. And the responsibility comes with conditions. There are two main conditions that in any position, you are as a father, you are as a police officer, you are as an imam, you are as a teacher, you are as a mother, even as a son, there are two things that you have to know. That person has to be trustworthy and has to be qualified. So you have really to build a trust within a family, and you have to be qualified. You have to learn, you have to study, you have to work, and whatever that job, that duty required, you have to seek. So these two important. Otherwise, we are going to fail in our duties. So as a father, yes, you have to educate yourself and keep educating yourself about all these problems. Sometimes there is a red flags, there, and you have to be smart how to deal with it. The Sheik Fatah, inshallah, he will mention some of those red flags for the parent. The problem is in front of you, and you cannot see. No, there's a red flags in there. So you have to be smart, you have to educate yourself, and you have to keep up with that. The problem is coming, there, and the police obviously can tell you. There's many tricks, many problems people develop. And it's hard even for them to give up, to follow up with those things, It's very sad, but that's how it is in society, especially nowadays with all of the imaginary world and internet and all of that. There's many problems happen. Even the police services, sometimes it's hard for them to track, all of these activities. That is even hard. But at least they are trying their best, to protect our societies. So there are many things are evil outside. I'm not saying that to scare you, but to prepare you, to have the right expectation. We don't want to think things are rosy and nice. There are problems. You're sending your kids to the school, do not assume it's safe, environment. So what we do, we should really have the good environment for our children. When I say good environment, that's environment outside home, environment at the school, and the street, everything's, and one of those as element of that environment, their friends. Most of the problems come from the companionship. Most of the problems comes, from the surrounding people. That could affect even on you as a father or you as a mother, by the way. I've seen as an imam and counseling people, there are some ladies, because of the boys in their mind, seeking divorce from other divorced ladies affect on them, and that depends in their mind. When I look at the problem, it's not a problem. But why is that? Because of their company. There are other people, they think, they are innocent and they are honest, and actually they could cause corruption for them. So your environment, who's in your companionship, who's your friend, who's with you? That's a question, it's very important. Most of the time, that's how it happens. Slowly, and people being dragged to being part of the gangs or by doing violence or having criminal activities because of that connection to somebody that led them to that. So it's very important that we have the good environment. If we've been successful in this, that's my one advice that keep in mind. If you wanted that, just try to have a pure, clean environment for yourself and your children. If you've been successful in that, inshallah, you will stay away from troubles. And may Allah protect you all. Jazakumullah khairan.
Just wanted to say thank you for everyone for taking the time out of their busy day. To the youth here, I'm Sergent Ziyad Zabian, as mentioned with London Police Constable Jackie Wilson. We're here for you. We are here to support you, so please don't be shy. When you have questions, whatever is on your mind, even if it's not on the topic, we will have time, we'll answer it. We will advocate for you. We want to be mentors and support you in every way, okay? We want to see you succeed. So there is going to be some knowledge shared here today. I hope it's going to help you. Presentation. Okay. Thank you.
Hello? Okay. I don't even know if I need a mic in this room, but. Okay. So yeah, not used to speaking into a mic, but I'll do it so you can hear me. So like Ziyad said, I'm Jackie Wilson. I've worked with him in our community services unit for several years. I was a school resource officer when that program was up and running, so I have a lot of experience working with youth, and we're working on getting back into the schools. And in the meantime, while that program's been on hold, I've done a lot of our youth education and youth engagement programs within our service. So that's why I'm here today. So yeah, same as Zee said, thanks for being here on a Saturday night. I'm sure there's lots of other things you could be doing on this beautiful evening. So I'm glad you're here learning, and hopefully you can share this information with others in your community, what you learn here tonight. So, and I love that it's groups of families here together. I love educating both adults and parents at the same time, because I think the lessons are really valuable when they go home to the whole home, and it's not just to children or just to parents. Also, I talk really fast, so if I go super fast, just tell me to slow down. Okay, so yeah, I guess I was asked to speak here a bit on youth gangs stuff, youth gang involvement in London, and then I'll talk a bit about just like pathways to youth gangs in general, some risk factors, protective factors, and what we can sort of do as a community to help support our youth so that they're not getting into these types of behaviors. So I'm not a gang detective. I work in community services. I work with youth. I have collected information, though, from members of our Guns and Gangs unit who have provided me with any of the intelligence stuff that I'll share in here, and same with the data. Any of that has come from our like crime analysts, but I'm not specifically a gang detective. So when we talk about gangs, when we use that term, it's when a term itself and defining gangs can be challenging, because sometimes different groups have different definitions for it between academics, police, educators, governments, etc. The one we'll use today sort of for our working definition is just a group of 3 or more people, whether they're formally or informally organized. And then they have a common name or common identifying sign or symbols that indicate that you're a member and part of that gang. And then you use that membership to explicitly incite violence, support violence, or engage in criminal street level activities. Makes sense. And then when we're looking at how to identify whether someone is part of a gang itself, there's lots of different indicators here. I won't read them all off to you. Most of you can read. But right, and a lot of this is not new knowledge for most of you, right? So when we think of like big gangs that are common, you know, across the world, or let's look at the United States, for example, right? Bloods and Crips, different colors associated with the gang signs. Historically, things like graffiti have been big. I'll talk on this a bit in a little bit too. The landscape of how gangs are identifying themselves has changed a lot in recent years, just with changes to now having access to social media and the way that they're sharing their membership with gangs. But you know, traditionally it was stuff, like I said, like big colors, signs, graffiti, things like that. And then when we look at it as far as when something's going to like courts, they like to see at least 2 of these criteria to be met in order for them to say that yes, these members, when they were committing those crimes, were part of a gang. In London, so our gang landscape here is highly influenced by Toronto gangs. The gangs that come up in London are looking to these Toronto gangs as role models and are attempting to mimic any gangs that they create here that are new around those Toronto gangs, or they're acting as sort of members of those gangs in Toronto as well. And so members from Toronto will come to London to recruit, or members here will go and join them in Toronto to do activities as well, but living here. So the 4 known gangs that we have right now in London, and this is coming from our Guns and Gangs unit, are Only the Brothers, short form OTB, Shoot to Kill, short form SDK, Forever the Boys, short term FTB, and then Lydia's Middle Boys, LMB. So in the last several years in London, these are the ones that are currently the most active, and there's been lots of documented occurrences with these specific gangs over that time period. Over the years, there's historically been lots of other different gangs as well, but these are the main ones that Guns and Gangs unit is sort of following right now. I'll just show some sort of pictures of members of what these look like. So this is an FTB group here. This was taken from, I think, a recent robbery or assault at White Oaks Mall. I'll touch on this more. Don't let your kids hang out at the mall Saturday night. Not a good place to be. And I'll touch on this a bit more too. You'll see, like, you notice the, face coverings, maybe some color stuff, making those symbols in the photos. I don't think the graffiti behind them is necessarily related to them. I think in this case, they're just hanging out in a parking garage that already has graffiti on it. But, you know, I mean, it doesn't take a lot to maybe look at this group of people and think that maybe they're not up to good things just from looking at them. OTB, this is another big thing, right? Showing off pictures with things that are blatantly criminal, right? So firearms, other weapons, big weapons that are certainly not legal to have. More there, right? It's like the intimidation factor. So they're trying to purposely look intimidating in these photos with the weapons, with the money here, money that's been accessed through crime, gang symbols, that stuff. Tattoos are a big one, big way of identifying now. So seeing lots of different tattoos or different words that and meaning that might only be known to opposing gangs. You might not know what is that, Sakya Mata means necessarily, but if you were one of those rival gangs, that's going to mean something to you. Same with some of the like acronyms used there. So this is just showing something that was found in a 2022 investigation by our Guns and Gangs unit. Tons of charges, obviously illegal firearms, drug charges from that. So this stuff is happening in London, right? As much as we like to think that maybe some of this stuff doesn't happen in a city like London, it absolutely does go on here. We unfortunately have more violence and guns and weapons than we would like to have, and they are in the hands of our youth. Oh, this is a little video here. I didn't make this. So this is something that a kid in a gang or whoever's in the gang has like actively posting these things, whether it's on their story or online, right? Like showing off the gun. That's a big way that they, I don't want to say market themselves, but intimidate and try and recruit others into their gangs too. So when we look at local trends, like I said, right, it's all based on GTA stuff. So right now, lots of GTA-based gang members are coming into London, trying to influence or mentor our local gangs. There's also instances of gangs coming into London and forcibly taking over residence of vulnerable people. So we'll see that in housing complexes. Newcomers, people that are vulnerable and don't know necessarily maybe how the legal system operates here, and maybe don't know that if they report that the police might help them in that situation, so they're afraid to report it. So that's how this type of stuff perpetuates and goes on. And then it often leads to them engaging in other criminal behaviors. We see it too where gangs come in and they're taking advantage of these vulnerable people and getting them addicted to drugs, and then it becomes a vicious circle, right? Because they can't get out of it for a lot of reasons. So now they're addicted to drugs, now they need more drugs to support their addiction, so now they need to engage in crimes to continue to be able to support that. And obviously a big trend of increased violence among youth, both in the schools and the community, like the last few years, right? The type of violence we're seeing has really escalated from what it was, let's say, and I hate using pre and post COVID, but even if we, looking back 5 years ago, right, the level of violence is at a whole other level right now. And if you have youth and talk to them about this, I mean, I'm sure you hear about stuff depending on what schools they're at or things that are going on at school, seeing stuff in the media about things that are taking place. A lot of the violence is being posted online as well, so everyone's seeing it. That's a big difference from when I was a kid, right? Stuff happened. It certainly wasn't, the violent level wasn't what it is now. Ours was, someone would meet after school in the park and get in a fight with fists, and yeah, that wasn't good, but it was fists. No one had knives then. No one had guns. And, other than, yes, high level gang stuff, sure, but, the stuff that was going on with most of our youth, that was the case, and then that was it. It wasn't videoed. Not everyone in the world saw it later that night on social media, right? So it just sort of happened, and then it was done, whereas now all this stuff is in everyone's face all the time. And yeah, violent stuff, looking at lots of robberies, like I said, stabbings, most youths, unfortunately, the reality of it is that most youths are carrying knives with them, and at school, and that's super scary, because then, what happens is something that did just start as that fight, which you might not think, okay, young people are going to be young people, yeah, there's going to be fights that break out or whatever, but now it's a whole different ballgame when someone in a fight pulls out a knife, right, and someone then gets stabbed, right? And when I don't have a slide on it here, and the thing I always usually start off with when I'm talking about youth stuff is just sort of a slide on, remembering that youth brain and their ability to make good decisions, right? Like they don't have that brain development. Your brain's not fully developed when you're a young person, so they don't have the ability to make good decisions. So the impulse control isn't there, right? So it's really easy to see how something escalates so quickly from just, a physical fight to I have a knife on me and not having the ability to make a good decision and not pull that out in the midst of something where they're already, heightened and triggered and all of that. So it just creates bad situations. And guns, right? You see guns in those pictures there. Real guns, absolutely. People can access guns through lots of different means. Those Toronto people coming in, they definitely have access to guns. You can buy guns online now. You can make guns with 3D printers, right? Access to that is certainly very, very different than it was, like I said, when I was younger. And then fake guns too, right? So you can access, like I drive in, if I come in, I live outside of London. If I come in down Dundas Street past the Gibraltar market there, there was a period of time in the summer where the billboard there was advertising, airsoft Glocks or something, just something ridiculous that shouldn't be advertised, right? These weapons look exactly like real firearms, and basically anyone can go into a market and buy those things, right? They're used for paintball or whatever. That's fine in those, but like, our youth are using having those weapons on them when they're committing thefts, which then turn into robbery. And when you look at consequences that could come of it, right, a robbery charge is a very different charge than theft. And also then looking at the other side of it is if you have a gun that looks like a real gun, someone else is going to assume that's a real gun, right? And the level of violence that's going to come from that is going to be much, much higher, or the potential for harm from someone else or harm from a police officer. Because if someone pulls a gun on me, I can't tell that it's real or fake by looking at those guns. So that gets really scary. Net banging. So I talked a bit about how the climate of how these gangs show off has changed over the years. So a lot of their, I don't know what word to use, the way they share their messaging is now done online, right? So like I said, it's not tagging graffiti on the walls at night. Now it's stuff that's all done online. So using social media to convey those violence and intimidating messages. So that can be on like any social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, all that. Drill or drilla rap music is a big thing. We see that with our young people too here. So it's a type of rap music. It's usually not very good, where they're in their lyrics, like spewing off violent gang-related type things, could be indicating that they're gonna engage in behavior against an opposing gang or whatever that looks like. So that's another big way that they promote themselves. And yeah, it's just a very different climate. So right before, yeah, you'd spray something on the wall, that would be it, kind of be done. Now, when something's on the net, it's there forever. And the ability for something to be shared is so different, right? So you start that, you post something that you're on Instagram and your followers are, let's say 200. All it takes is one person who's following you to then reshare whatever it was that you posted, and maybe they have 600, right? It's not hard for things to get to spread really, really quickly. So, and the other side of that too is your youth who you don't think is consuming that type of stuff or wouldn't have access to that type of stuff, it gets shared with them just based on someone they happen to follow, right? And you just hit that button and share everything. So yeah, just really different effects of things and a wider audience now with their ability to do things online. Other things you'll see with gangs, it can be just as simple as like quick little video snaps of, gangs have sort of territorial pieces of, so, we'll just use random areas in London. Maybe one gang, Kipps Lane is their zone, right? And other gangs shouldn't be going into their zone. So you'll see an opposing gang just showing a quick 10-second snap of them maybe just being near a sign or a store that they know is in that area where they're not supposed to be. And that's their way of intimidating that other gang online, right? And you or I would have no idea what that means looking at it, right? You'd have no idea that it's something related to gang behaviors, but that other gang is blatantly knows what that is and knows that person shouldn't be in their zone, and then it just incites violence from there. So sometimes it's just, not as on its face clearly gang stuff, but if you think about it, that's how it is. So when we look at net banging here within London, there was an incident in 2023, so not long ago, between two gangs, one of which one of the members was killed throughout that. So these are young people. A young person was killed. when asked why, the young person said it had to be done. So that kind of alludes to the fact that it was like a gang-based sort of beef. And then that in itself incited more rivalry between the opposing gangs, right? And then a year later from that, we had big issues because the opposing gang then circulated a big video on Snapchat that was showing blatant disrespect of the deceased member. I think in this case it was potentially them like stomping on a grave or just something overtly disrespectful, but and just again around that anniversary time we saw an amount of violence related to that because they were online trying to incite that violence between the other gang. So when we're looking at maybe like even like what to look out for on social media, how to maybe have an idea that maybe a kid that you see your youth is following online, or maybe a kid that you know and you can access their profile, and this is important for like community leaders when you're leading groups and stuff and you have access to maybe some stuff on social media. So they use social media to sort of show that they're part of this gang. So if you look at, let's say, their Instagram handle, for example, they'll add their 3-letter gang relation in there. So like the bottom one, you got big OTB on there. So that's showing right away that they're OTB. And then if someone from their gang is deceased or incarcerated, they might add an RIP or free that person. So free if the person's in jail, and then like some initials for those people, or like the dove is like a rest in peace symbol, something like that. And so there's little clues often in their handles which show who they're associated with. Another trend you can kind of look for online is, so if you have someone, let's say, who's got no posts, so you look on their account, pull it up. I should have put a picture of this. So like someone who's got like 0 posts, but let's say 500 followers. That might be a little weird. Like, why would 500 people be following this person if they're not actually posting anything? Like, I'm on Instagram. I follow people that post stuff. That's what I do on, right? That's what you're consuming on one of those apps, is like the posts that other people are posting. So why would that be? Okay, because they're not posting things that are leaving there, that stay on their little, I'm trying to think of what the word is, grid, let's say, for example, on Instagram. But what they're doing instead is they're maybe in their description, instead of posting things, they've got a link in their description which links to another site. Telegram's a big one. I won't go too in depth into the crazy social media world, but like one called Telegram, let's say, where they'll go on there, and that's their link to their pages on Telegram where they're overtly selling drugs, weapons, things like that. So it's a way for youth to just link right through that and access right into that behavior. And youths aren't smart, so another reason they won't post all that stuff so that it's there on their grid. They're trying to like remain anonymous potentially, but then if you link through into their next one, it doesn't take long before 4 whatever later, and all of a sudden there's a picture of them holding a gun on the other thing. But another trend you can look for on there too, and that's changed, is, like I said, so they're not using necessarily like overt gang colors in their pictures and things, but showing off jewelry is a big one, so they call it drip. So jewelry is a big way to show big money, right? Like, so it costs a lot of money to have a $50,000 necklace. It's a way that you can show off to people who know what that means, that you're, a big, whatever, high runner gangbanger, but it doesn't show you linked specifically to a certain gang, because there was some changes with the courts recently where if you are shown to have committed a crime that was related to gang activity, then it's harsher punishments, right? So that's one of the reasons they're not as overtly sharing this stuff. And then tattoos are another one too. So a tattoo, right, might not be as blatant, but members of your gang, opposing gangs, et cetera, know what some of that means. Another thing to look for in social media stuff or in text or chat groups is using a lot of coded language and emojis. And the reason they do this, well, part of it is obvious. So using coded language, I mean, you're less likely to text someone, I want you to go kill this person. Pretty obvious what that person's doing. So coded language might be something else, or emojis are another big one. So with emojis, and I don't know if you've ever done this. So say if you're on a chat group on WhatsApp and you decide you want to save that conversation for whatever reason, maybe it was a meaningful conversation you had like with a loved one who passed away or something, you want to keep that chat. If any emojis that were in there, when you download that conversation, they don't show up as emojis. in that same conversation, they show up as like little question marks or little X's. So this is a way that they can communicate things that then wouldn't be downloaded when someone was investigating that or using it for court purposes and things. So just like little things you can kind of look out for if you're looking for clues towards not necessarily that your youth are involved in that specific behavior, but perhaps that they're following people or consuming content from people who might be involved in that sort of stuff, and then might be a good conversation like, hey, maybe we don't follow these people online. So I do a ton of our social media and online safety stuff. I could talk for 2 hours on that here today. I'm not going to do that, but just like, right, there are lots of red flags you can look out for online. So and I think the mom's going to speak about that a bit later too. So just monitor what your kid is doing online, and we can certainly support you if you have any questions down the road about other things you can look out for in relation to like gang behavior. I'm going to say this too now. So when I talk about gang behavior, especially with youth, I think it's really important to understand too, like the pathway towards gang behavior, and that, you know, gang behavior seems, you know, we all know someone goes out and shoots an opposing gang behavior, but the pathway to it starts as little things like thefts and assaults and like street level violence, and that's how it starts to get there. So again, just looking for those things, and I think I'll touch on this in a little bit in some of my other slides here. Another big thing online, no face, no case. You might hear you say this too, right? If the saying is that, right, if the courts can't see their face, then there's going to be no case against them. So you see a lot of them covering up their faces when they're doing things now, and right. So could be obvious, blatant, on its face gang behavior, or it could be as simple as kids, you know, stealing from the dollar store with masks and stuff on now, right? So, and that's something where COVID made it really easy for that, because it was normal for us to wear masks for quite a period of time. So it's not, before COVID, it would be very strange if you saw someone out and about wearing a medical mask or cloth mask or something. Now it's not that odd, and people are still wearing those for health reasons. So it kind of, it's made it actually really interesting for us when we try, and there's a change to some of the charges and the punishments where if you're wearing a disguise to do a certain offense, and for us to be able to justify that this person was blatantly wearing a disguise and not wearing a mask for health reasons. So interesting. So I'll just talk a little bit about some of our data and statistics in London. So when we look at stuff that youth gangs are involved in here, it is unfortunately things like, firearm possession, firearm trafficking, human trafficking, and drug trafficking. So the graph there just shows some of the shooting trends there. And you can see, I guess, basically, definitely since sort of 2020, shootings on the rise for sure. And this is, I think, back to June 1st of this year. I don't know exactly what we're at number-wise, but and then if you look at the hotspot map there, so all the red pins show that where any shooting occurrences took place involving, I believe these are just involving young people within London this year, and then the red hotspots on the map that just shows the higher density areas of where shootings were that took place over from 2019 to 2023. So when we look at what areas of London specifically are kind of considered more high-risk areas of concern for youth-related gang activity, so within London Middlesex community housing complexes, and those are all across the city, so they're not certainly not concentrated to a certain area. After hours bars were causing a lot of problems for us. Two of the big ones that were responsible for some shootings among youth gangs have recently been closed down, thankfully. And then just in general areas where youths can gather unsupervised. And this is the big one, and I think this is where this is important to think of. Like, most of you in the room that are sitting here on a Saturday night with your kids probably aren't leaving tonight and going to an after-hours bar, right? You're good parents, good kids. You're all sitting here on Saturday night engaging, consuming this content at your own free will because you want to learn and are likely good parents, right? So, but things like the malls, things like hanging around wherever after school, you know, and it could be something as simple as like the back parking lot here on a night when it's not supervised, right? So it's just understanding that, and again, that's going back to that lens of that youth brain, right? And their ability to decision make and impulse control and all those things. So sometimes bad things come out of a big group of youth being unsupervised in an area, and again, often at nighttime. So, and malls are tricky. Malls are very tricky for sure. And I think a lot of parents think, oh, my kids are good, they're just going to the malls with their friends. I can tell you I've done a lot of work both at White Oaks and Masonville Mall, and like no good really comes of your youth being there Friday night at 8 o'clock to when the mall closes to the parking garage later. Like no good comes of being there. So it's just an opportunity. It's too much opportunity to be influenced by others that are there to get maybe something that just like a little beef that turns into a fight that again turns into someone having a knife. Now it's a stabbing. Now it's a homicide. Now it's a bigger thing, right? Like, so even when we're not looking at the scope of big gang related behavior, it's those pathways to that violence to get there. A lot of those places are where some of that stuff can start. So just be mindful of what your kids are doing in their free time and where they are. And yeah, so even just looking at those high risk areas in London, those ones have been more of the focal point, but there's certainly no area of the city that's immune to this sort of stuff, right? This type of thing can happen anywhere. So why would a youth want to become involved in a gang, right? And I think it's interesting because he spoke about it quite a bit too, right? And I think it ties in a lot with what you were speaking about, right? Of just that connection to family, connection to something, right? So a lot of youth get involved in this type of behavior or get involved with gangs because it provides them with a sense of belonging within a unit of some sort. Maybe not good belonging, but to them, if they don't have that sense of belonging from somewhere else, that can often provide that companionship that's lacking in their life. Identity and recognition is a big one, allowing them to achieve a level of status. So maybe they're not the most popular kid at school. Maybe they're in a huge family and you're not the favorite kid in the family, and right? So that recognition that you can access by being part of a group like that helps you foster a sense of identity that maybe you're lacking in other areas of your life. Protection's a big one. So often youth are just growing up in an area where they maybe don't feel safe because there's other gang stuff going on. So they feel safer if they join in with that behavior because then they're part of it and they feel protected by those gang members, right? So being part of the gang, at least they have someone who's going to support and be on their side if something happens. Intimidation is one too, right? So yes, and when I talk about like GTA people coming here to kind of recruit and intimidate youth into gangs, that's part of it, right? So sometimes they end up as part of a gang, not necessarily on their own free will, but because they don't feel like they have a choice in the matter, they're being intimidated into it. Some of it just starts with just simple criminal activity that may not be too high level to start, but then escalates from there. And then if you accidentally maybe stumble into some drug subculture or drug activity, then you continue with that and you want the gang for protection and you want the gang to be able to help you profit and grow your business and stuff too. And another one that's not on here on my list is just the financial piece of it, right? So sometimes being involved in these groups and committing the crimes that they're doing leads them to have access to money that they don't have otherwise, and that can be, really appealing to a young person to, if they look around and see that everyone in that gang has really nice running shoes that they can't afford or has that expensive jewelry or, and I think we automatically think a lot of this is male behavior. Females do get involved with this too. Often their roles in gangs are a little bit different, but females do. And then for them, it's things like nice purses, money to get their nails done, get their hair done, like all those things, shoes, jewelry, all that sort of stuff, right? So not just males. And we see a lot of really, really concerning violent behavior amongst our young females, and fights and stomping and hair pulling and weapons. That stuff does definitely go on amongst females. So, and I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but it's certainly not, females aren't immune to this stuff at all. So yeah, I kind of touched on this, right? So any sort of, I don't want to say lower level criminal stuff, but there's lots of things that can lead to these gang associated behavior. So just a history of violence in itself, or an affinity to violence, that can lead you to sort of get involved in some of this stuff. Substance use and mental health stuff are big ones too, right? So once you get addicted to substances, it becomes a really expensive habit. So then you start to commit crimes so that you can support that habit. Structure of these two, I won't go into this too in depth, is, right, big fish down to youth being sort of the little fish in the pond, and the way that they get recruited into them is these are the youth that they use to carry drugs around for them or carry things around, right? Or sell drugs at school or whatever that looks like, right? And you get kind of pulled into that, and it's very hard to get out of it. But again, the appeal to it is maybe, you know, that money or that sense of belonging in it, because you always think like, why? Oh, my kid would never sell drugs. Oh, well, you take a step back and you're like, oh, well, he would really maybe like to have money to sell stuff, and the way they sell it to these kids is, you know, you're not going to get in trouble, you're protected by the gang, all those stuff, right? Bullying, harassment's a big one, right? And that ties in a bit with mental health. I think I have another slide on it in a minute, but you know, if you're a kid that's not feeling like you belong, you're being bullied, being harassed, right? This might be an opportunity for you to join someone and then maybe retaliate against those people that were bullying you, right? Yeah, and another thing too, like, the gang members make promises to these youth that they're going to take care of them. They promises them that, yeah, we got your back. Nothing bad's going to happen to you. We're going to take care of you. We're going to make sure you're good. And some of it, too, is also when they try and say no or get out of it, then it's like threats of violence towards family members or friends or things like that, right? So, again, that intimidation factor that gets them tied into this. Risk factors. So I won't read these all off. Again, you can read, but common things and things that you touched on when you spoke as well, right? That connection to family is a big one. So if you're coming from a home environment that isn't super stable, maybe no sense of or belonging within there, some dysfunction within the family, that can be, you know, right? You start seeking other places to belong, and that can go for school as well. Physical abuse and neglect. Poverty is one, right? So poverty or unstable housing, we see this a lot with youth that don't have places to sleep, right? They're couch surfing, so then quickly they're getting tied in with other youths that are maybe out, and like I said, it starts with small stuff. Maybe it's just out at the dollar store, and you're stealing from there or robbing from there with the fake gun that you have in your bag, and that's how this stuff sort of starts. I won't speak a lot on ACEs. If you don't know what ACEs are, haven't heard that term, it's a good one to go home and look up. So adverse childhood experiences, these are just things that make people more susceptible to a lot of risk factors towards crime, poverty, health issues, all sorts of stuff. So all these things. Poor access to community resources is another one, right? So you can have a youth who's got a whole bunch of these risk factors, really terrible home situation, no sense of belonging at home, but maybe they have connection to someone really great in the university or in the community, and that can be enough. You know, all it takes sometimes is one trusted, caring adult for a youth to feel that they belong. And also I'll touch on this at the end, but like that's where that piece of everyone working collectively, school, family, police, community partners, everyone, because if we can wrap around these youths and provide them with that sense of belonging and maybe just some connections to trusting, caring adults, that's how we can avoid them getting into this pathway in the first place. So these are risk factors, and these are risk factors too for gang behavior. These are risk factors for behavioral issues. These are risk factors for other criminal stuff. I always kind of think of it like a continuum of things. So, and the other thing to think of is that, you know, you may have all of these things, but you may not, and because you have some protective factors, or there's also 100% gang members or young criminals who come from super stable, high income households, right? So there's no, you know, if you have X, Y, and Z, you're definitely gonna go this way, but these are just things that increase your risk of getting involved in those things. Mental health, and I touched on this already with the bullying harassment, they can really just make youth more vulnerable to be groomed into these activities. And then when you look at these pieces of mental health, so being depressed, having antisocial behavior, being anxious, these might lead to youth being more susceptible to joining in and engaging in gang-related behaviors, right? Because again, that sense of belonging. And then the paranoia piece, like once you get involved, then you start maybe have increased paranoia that someone's gonna come after you, so it just kind of perpetuates in a cycle. So I talked about risk factors, some protective factors here, right? We already talked about these. So family support, right? That's a big one. So feeling like you're cared for at home. Positive parental involvement is a big one. So for all your parents that are here with your kids today, that's awesome. Right, and it goes a long way for your kids when they know and think that you care about them. Positive social connections and school environment. So it's just really important that you know, get your kids out, being social, engaging with other people, doing things that are positive and making them feel like what they're, you know, they have a meaningful purpose in living, and that, you know, we are highly social creatures, so you do need to be out and socializing on video games or socializing online is not the same thing as face-to-face stuff. So, you know, it's really important as parents to kind of push our kids maybe a little bit outside of their comfort zone sometimes when they prefer to socialize in that manner. Like, no, it is really important for you to get out of the house and engage in social activities with people, you know, in real life, face-to-face. Obviously noticing things, right? You talk about paying attention to your kids, noticing things like if there's changes in their behaviors, they're becoming more delinquent, they're starting, you know, drug use, things like that, right? Those are, if you can reduce those things, those are going to help protect them from being engaged in these types of behaviors. When we talk about how we can intervene and support them, right? Just really connect them to supports in the community or mentorship opportunities. So here is a great place, right? Being surrounded by lots of people who are mentoring them, teaching them good things, and sharing in a shared religion, shared culture, those types of things. That's really valuable and help, again, increase that sense of belonging, right? They belong to a group here, they feel comfortable here, great. And appealing alternatives to gang involvement. So when I talk about your kids not being hanging around at White Oaks Mall at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, okay, well, what else are they going to be doing then? So how can we find them something that they're going to spend their time doing instead? Okay, so maybe instead of being at White Oaks Mall at 10, maybe the community center across the street is offering a basketball drop-in for use at that time or something like that. That's something that they're going to have some supervision, right? Because that piece of unsupervised use, some supervision, and something that is going to allow them to engage in things that are better than being out loose in the community. Job support, right? So employment counseling, and you know, maybe this for some older youth, but not necessarily, right? Like that piece of, okay, they have no money, they want nice shoes, maybe let's help them figure out how they can get a part-time job, and that can also just be really valuable in a lot of things, work ethic, again, feeling that sense of belonging, all sorts of things. And this is like call on the community partners and just us, like when we educate, we really need to start this education young, right? So with our young elementary age youth to start building those positive protective factors from a young age and steering them down a good pathway instead of the other pathway. I'm almost done. A big thing I'm noticing with youth is that a lot of youth currently think that until they're 18, it doesn't matter if they get in trouble with the law, because right, they're under, you know, the YCJA, the Youth Criminal Justice Act, nothing's going to happen to them, or it's just a youth record, it's going to go away when I turn 18. So that's really concerning, because they kind of think that like they're immune to punishment or consequences and stuff. So helping, you know, educate our youth that no, like the decisions you do make as a young person can have serious like long-term effects for you. And alongside with that, like the criminal justice system is supposed to be helping our youth. Currently right now, the waits are so long for court and a lot of programming and stuff that, you know, if something happens, there's no direct immediate accountability, and it's really delayed. And we know that with youth, you need to have like consequences that are essentially immediate. Otherwise, it's not meaningful to them at all, because that's the way their brains operate. So yeah, talking to them about what sort of short and long-term consequences can come of their behavior, really emphasizing that education, mentorship whenever possible. And if you can find someone with some like lived experience that maybe was at some point kind of in a bad space, not necessarily gang involved, but maybe involved in some criminal stuff and how they got out of it, or maybe some stories of, you know, the reasons why they got out of it because things were looking bad for them or whatever. That's really meaningful for a youth to be able to have someone with some lived experience speak to them about this stuff rather than me sitting here preaching to them, or parents or whatever, right? So just when you're looking for mentors, that's sometimes helpful. And then, you know, as parents or trusted adults in youth life, just like work hard to build that trust and open communication with your youth so that they're gonna come to you with questions about stuff that gets tricky in their life. Young people are gonna tricky stuff's gonna come up for them, and if they don't feel comfortable coming to you, they're either not gonna go seek out support from anyone to learn and make a good decision about it, or they're gonna keep it inside, right? So if you can build those open lines of communication to say, you know, you can kind of come to me with anything and I'm gonna help work you through this, I'm gonna help educate you, like that's your job as a parent. It doesn't mean that they're gonna come to you and there's never gonna be a consequence if they've made a bad choice, but your job is to keep them safe and you're gonna help them guide through that in the most meaningful and appropriate way. and when you're looking for ways of how you can maybe build that connection with young people, because I know that gets tricky, especially as they start to become teenagers and no longer want to hang out with you as parents, right? So you just gotta work really hard to, start building that from a young age, and then, show genuine interest in stuff that they're doing. And maybe you don't want to talk about Minecraft for 2 hours with them, but like that might be really meaningful to them if you do, and that might open the, doors to them feeling more comfortable coming to you with something that's more meaningful than Minecraft. Regular check-ins, this is a big one, and do this in person, and do this when you're checking in with stuff social media-wise. Like I said, I won't go into too deep about that, but if you have questions at the end about social media things, that's a big one, right? So check in, know who they're, what they're consuming online and who they're engaging with online, and then who they are doing the same in real life. It's important, right? Your number one job as a parent is to keep your kids safe, and you can't do that if you don't know who they're engaging with or talking to. Be consistent and patient, and utilize a trauma-informed approach. So, right, understanding, and this may be more, especially with community partners, when we're dealing with youth, everyone's going to come from a different background, a different, things they've experienced in their life. So we can't just create a one-size-fits-all approach for everyone, because everyone's got different things that they're dealing with. Just some quick contact info there. So if anyone has ever that's like the email for our gang unit. So if you ever have intelligence relating to anything gang-wise, they monitor that 24/7 and love that information. If you just want support with youth engagement or community things or questions about any of that stuff, you can reach out to us in our unit. So our community services unit as a whole has an email there. Our diversity officer who works underneath Ziyad. I'm sure you already have Ziyad's email. He'd be happy to be with you. But there's another diversity officer that works with them that could help support as well. And then my email's on there too. I have no problem with anyone reaching out at any time. Hopefully that was not too long. Sure.
First of all, thank you so much. Is it working? Yeah? Okay. I was going to say, actually, you did answer some of my questions in some of your slides. What is the age range or age group that these kids are in? Like in the gangs that you kind of went over?
That's a good question, and I don't know if we'd have a specific answer because it might not be tracked. I will say that when I talk about the increased level of violence in youth, that is starting like super young. So that's why I'm saying when we start about talking about educating young, it's like before 8. Like we're starting to see like some, and because you start to see 8-year-olds with phones, yeah. Right? So yeah, it starts young. So within the criminal code, you can't charge anyone until they're 12. So we wouldn't have, our data might not be accurate as well, right? So there could be youths that are involved in some of this gang stuff that led to charges, but the ones who were under 12 can't be charged, so they're just sort of listed as subject. So, yeah, and I'm not the gang specific expert because I don't work in there, but like I can say from knowing youth behaviors and things, like it starts young, but like, yeah, some of the higher level gang stuff that's going on, we're probably looking at a little bit older, maybe, the 14 plus range. And then these youth gangs, I think when you use the term youth within gangs to youth outside of the criminal code, because criminal code is under 18, but a young person in a gang might be someone who's still considered like early 20s and stuff as well. I'd probably consider that could be part of a youth gang versus like a higher level organized crime, Hells Angels gang or something. Yeah.
Just to add on, like an ideal age right now to do the crime for them, that's what they want, is to get that 12. So grade 8, grade 9, think early. That's where they plant those seeds of, just like Jackie explained, the jewelry, the shoes, the watches, all that nice stuff. That's where they plant the seeds young. So maybe by grade 10, 11, 12, they get them full-fledged into the gang, doing more serious stuff. So they'll start them off young and early. The thefts will do those minor crimes, and then they'll progress them. So I just, like you said, there's no specific age, but just think, I'd say grade 7, grade 8. That's where they'd probably start trying.
The other thing we see too is like youth kind of like wannabe gang behavior. So they don't have a direct tie to a specific gang, but they like are adopting kind of that persona that they want to be in a gang. They're trying to make this drill music, or they're trying to just like look like a gangbanger, act like a gangbanger. So you see that too. So they may not meet that criteria when I talked about meeting the criteria of specifically being involved in a gang, but they are, if you went and talked to, you know, their principal at school, they'd say, yeah, that group of kids, it kind of seems like they're maybe, you know, a gang or a wannabe gang. Yeah.
So what we'll do at this point is we have about 20 minutes before Maghrib prayer. So we're going to split up into the two workshops. One is for the youth, the other is for the parents, until Maghrib prayer. We'll pray Maghrib, and then we'll come back down for those who have questions. We'll come back down after Maghrib, and Ziyad will be willing to wait afterwards. So we'll have some opportunity for Q&A after Maghrib prayer at this point in time. So inshallah, we'll have the youth, we'll go over there with Sister Raja Al-Abid, and then I'll stay here with the parents. So, the youth will actually be in the lunch area, yeah. Yeah, we can just stay here. I can stay here. So, yeah, I'm fine here. For the parents? Okay. So the parents will just stay here. Yeah. Can. Yeah. Sure.